Neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters are substances that send signals from one neuron to another across a synapse. Some neurons only produce one type of neurotransmitter. The presence of numerous neurotransmitters in the synapse at the same time permits neurons to exert multiple effects at the same time. Synaptic vesicles, which are found at the terminals of presynaptic neuron cells, store neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are released into the synapse from the axon terminal once the presynaptic cell is activated by a nerve impulse. The neurotransmitters that are released spread across the synapse and bind to specific receptors on the postsynaptic neuron. There are three types of neurotransmitters: acetylcholine, biogenic amines, and amino acids. However, whether or not the postsynaptic neuron fires is determined by the overall influence of excitatory and inhibitory functions.
Hormones, in addition to neurotransmitters, are chemical messengers that the body can use. Endocrine glands such as the pancreas, thyroid, and ovaries are in charge of producing hormones such as insulin, melatonin, and testosterone, which are then secreted into the bloodstream. Hormones are in charge of sustaining normal biological activities such as growth, digestion, and energy. The endocrine and neurological systems collaborate to maintain homeostasis, which is the stable, balanced, and optimal operation of the body's physiological systems. The hypothalamus in the brain manages our basic biological demands and sends signals to the pituitary gland, the master controller of the endocrine system, which sends commands to the other glands in the endocrine system to modulate the production of various hormones.
Hormones are normally secreted by the endocrine system and delivered into the bloodstream, but can have far-reaching effects on distant target cells. Some hormones such as melatonin and cortisol are created in the brain, released into the bloodstream, and influence the other regions of the body. Neurotransmitters, on the other hand, are released by presynaptic nerve terminals in the brain. They go over a synaptic cleft, which is a small area between the two adjacent neurons, to the next cell, known as the postsynaptic neuron. They bind as a specific receptor, generating changes in the electrical characteristic of target cells that can result in a variety of postsynaptic consequences. Neurotransmitters operate on a local level and act quickly. Hormones and neurotransmitters both have an impact on our ideas, motivation, and ability to learn and concentrate. Neurotransmitters have a short half-life, whereas hormones have prolonged half-life. Furthermore, neurotransmitters can influence both deliberate and involuntary actions: feeding, bathing, walking, breathing, and blinking. Hormones in the endocrine system always act unintentionally.
How to convince people to end stigma about clinical depression anxiety disorder. First, we will discuss what clinical depression and how to develop people who likely have them. Clinical depression. Depression can range from mild transient melancholy to severe long-term depression. Clinical depression, also known as major depression or major depressive disorder, is a more severe form of depression. It's not the same of depression brought on by loss such as loved one's death or medical such as thyroid issue. It's an indication of you might have significant depression if you feel hopeless and despair all the time. Working, studying, sleeping, eating, and enjoying friends and activities may be to friends suffering from serious depression. Clinical depression affects some people only once their lives, whereas it affects others multiple times.
Major depression can run in families and be passed down from generation to generation, but it often affects people who have never had the condition before. Clinical depression may present with the following signs and symptoms: sadness, weeping, emptiness, or a sense of helplessness, even for minor issues, angry outbursts, impatient, or dissatisfaction, loss of interest or enjoyment in most, if not all, typical activities such as sex, hobbies, or sports. Insomnia or sleeping too much might cause sleep difficulties. Due to exhaustion and the lack of energy, even minor chores necessitate additional effort, increased food cravings and weight gain, and decreased appetite and weight loss.
anxiety disorder is a form of mental illness. If you have an anxiety condition, you may react with fear and dread to particular items and circumstances. Physical indications of anxiousness include a racing heart and perspiration. Anxiety is normal. If you have to deal with a problem at work, go to an interview, take an exam, or make a significant decision. You may feel anxious or tense. Anxiety, on the other hand, can be advantageous. Anxiety, for example, aids us in recognizing risky circumstances and focusing our intention to keep us safe. An anxiety disorder, on the other hand, goes beyond the occasional worry and mild panic when your capacity to function is hampered by anxiety. When something elicits your emotions, you often overreact. Your reactions to the situations are beyond your control.
It might be difficult to get through the day when you suffer from anxiety disorders. Anxiety problems can be treated successfully using different methods. How to convince people to end the stigma about clinical depression and anxiety disorders. Effects of stigma. Even among care professionals, fear and misunderstanding often lead to bias against people with mental illnesses and addiction. It is one of the reasons why many people don't think it's a serious health problem. Prejudice and discrimination create emotions of hopelessness and guilt in persons who are unable to cope with their circumstances, making diagnosis and therapy difficult. First is, stigma has a significant negative impact on the well-being of individuals who are subjected to it. Second, stigma impacts people while they are having problems, while they are through treatment, while they are recovering, and even after their mental health issue has passed them by. And lastly, stigma has a tremendous effect on how people feel themselves and how others perceive them.
Things you can do to end or at least reduce stigma. Be conscious of your thoughts and actions. Examine your prejudicial thinking, which has been shaped by your upbringing and society. Be conscious of your attitudes and actions. Examine your prejudicial thinking, which has been perpetuated by your upbringing and culture. Choose your words with caution. The way we speak has an impact on how others see us. Words are important. When talking about yourself or someone else who has a mental illness, avoid using harmful words and phrases like nuts, crazy, or weird. Use words like people with a mental illness instead of mentally ill and died by suicide instead of committed suicide. If you overhear someone using harmful language, let them know.
Others must be educated, disseminate facts, and encourage positive attitudes, debunk myths and stereotype. Education can help to lessen stigma and enhance the atmosphere in which mental illness is treated. Education is the most effective tool you can use to combat any guilt you may feel about your mental illness and to ensure that others are aware of it. Focus on the bright side of things. Addiction and mental disorder are merely a component of a person's overall picture. Recognize someone's identity outside of their illness. The depth of a person's experience is reduced when they are viewed as their diagnosis. Their condition is not a defining component of their identity. People should be supported, treat everyone with dignity and respect, and provide encouragement and support. Share positive messages about mental health. Use social media or another method to openly discuss mental health. Express support for others who do and provide reliable information on mental illness and treatment. Everyone should be involved. It is against the law to refuse anyone with certain health problems, job, or a service as well.
Let your voice be heard. Send supportive messages and help them receive the care they need if you feel someone is experiencing a crisis or having difficulties with their mental health. If you notice someone in social media posting a status that exhibits indicators of self-harm, there are even ways to aid. Contact them or someone you know or report it on social media. Despite breakthroughs in our understanding of depression and other mental diseases, these conditions remain stigmatized. The stigma associated with mental illness can lead to feelings of shame and self-consciousness. Fighting mental health stigma is a vital approach to supporting your mental health while also giving people who are suffering in silence a voice. Depression is something you have. It does not define you. Your diagnosis does not define who you are. Not your depression, but your personality, talents, skills, and compassion define you. Sometimes life will kick you around, but sooner or later, you realize you're not just a survivor, you're a warrior, and you're stronger than anything life throws your way. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again.